What if the life you're living right now is the life you'll still be living 10 years from today? Same mornings, same fears, same excuses. Most people don't fail because they're weak. They fail because they keep telling themselves one dangerous lie. I'll start tomorrow. This is not a success story. This is not a fairy tale. This is the story of an ordinary man who almost wasted his entire life waiting for the perfect moment. Until one morning, he realized something terrifying. Tomorrow never comes. Daniel Carter lived in a quiet American town called Riverton, Ohio. It was the kind of place where nothing really went wrong, but nothing extraordinary ever happened either. At 38, Daniel's life looked stable from the outside. He had a steady job, a small apartment, a reliable car, and just enough money to pay the bills on time. People would call that a good life. But Daniel didn't feel good living it. Every morning followed the same script. The alarm rang at 6:30 a.m. He hit snooze twice. He dragged himself out of bed, poured the same coffee into the same mug, and stared out the window while the day slowly began. His drive to work never changed. Same roads, same traffic lights, same radio station playing the same songs. At the office, Daniel sat in a gray cubicle under white fluorescent lights. He did his work well enough to avoid trouble, but never enough to feel proud. Lunch came at the same time every day. So did the quiet thought that whispered in his mind, "Is this really it?" The most dangerous thing about Daniel's life wasn't pain, it was comfort. His life wasn't bad enough to force him to change, but it wasn't meaningful enough to make him feel alive. And that kind of comfort slowly becomes a prison. At night, Daniel returned to his apartment, exhausted but unsatisfied. He watched TV, scrolled on his phone, and distracted himself from the growing feeling that something was missing. Deep inside, he knew the truth. He wasn't tired from working hard, he was tired from living without purpose. Daniel once had dreams. He remembered them clearly. Writing something meaningful, becoming someone his younger self would admire, doing more than just surviving. But over time, those dreams were buried under responsibilities. Bills replaced ambition, routine replaced curiosity, fear replaced courage. And every night, just before falling asleep, Daniel told himself the same comforting lie: "I'll change soon." Not today, not now, soon. Weeks turned into months, months turned into years, and slowly, without realizing it, Daniel stopped living his life. He began repeating it. And that repetition, quiet, comfortable, and familiar, became his prison. Daniel Carter's greatest enemy was not failure, rejection, or lack of talent. It was delay. Delay dressed itself as patience. Delay pretended to be planning. But in reality, delay was fear wearing a polite mask. Whenever Daniel felt uncomfortable, he postponed action. When an idea excited him, he told himself he would research it later. When motivation appeared, he saved it for a better day. Tomorrow became his favorite hiding place, a soft, invisible cushion that protected him from risk. Tomorrow felt safe. In Daniel's mind, tomorrow was the day everything would change. Tomorrow he would wake up earlier. Tomorrow he would start reading again. Tomorrow he would finally take that idea seriously. He believed tomorrow was endless, always waiting for him just around the corner. But tomorrow never demanded anything from him. Today required effort. Today required courage. Tomorrow required nothing at all. And so, day after day, Daniel chose tomorrow. At work, he watched younger coworkers speak with confidence and energy. He told himself they were just luckier. He scrolled through social media and saw people building businesses, writing books, traveling the world. He convinced himself they had more time, more resources, more support. What he never admitted was the truth. They started. Daniel didn't lack intelligence. He didn't lack potential. What he lacked was the willingness to begin before he felt ready. Deep down, he feared discovering his limits. Starting meant risking failure, and failure meant facing the possibility that he might not be as capable as he hoped. So he waited. Waiting felt productive. Waiting felt responsible. Waiting felt mature. But waiting slowly drained his confidence. Each postponed decision made the next one harder. Each excuse made fear stronger. Over time, Daniel's self-trust eroded. He stopped believing in his own promises because he had broken too many of them. He wasn't lazy. He was trapped in a cycle of hesitation. At night, lying in bed, Daniel replayed conversations he never had and opportunities he never took. His mind filled with what-ifs. What if he had started earlier? What if he had taken that risk? What if he had believed in himself just once? Those questions haunted him because he knew the answer. Nothing stopped him, except the lie. The lie said he needed more time. The lie said he needed more confidence. The lie said the moment wasn't right. But the truth was brutal and simple. There was nothing wrong with the moment. There was something wrong with waiting. Daniel wasn't afraid of failing. He was afraid of finding out what would happen if he truly tried. And as long as he kept choosing tomorrow, his life stayed frozen, safe, predictable, and painfully unfinished. New Year's Eve arrived quietly for Daniel Carter. There were no plans, no parties, no countdown with friends. Just Daniel, alone in his small apartment, sitting on the couch while the television played scenes of people celebrating in crowded city streets. Laughter filled the screen, but the room around him remained silent. Outside his window, snow covered the sidewalks of Riverton, Ohio. The year was ending, and Daniel felt something heavy settle in his chest. Not sadness exactly, but a deep, hollow exhaustion. He picked up his phone and began scrolling. New year, new me. This is my year. Big changes coming. Post after post promised transformation. Daniel let out a short, humorless laugh. He had written those same words so many times that they no longer meant anything. Every December he believed them. Every January he forgot them. As midnight approached, the noise on television grew louder. Fireworks exploded across the screen, bright and beautiful. Daniel muted the sound. In the silence, his thoughts became impossible to ignore. On the coffee table sat an old notebook, its pages bent and yellowed with time. Daniel hadn't opened it in years. He didn't know why he reached for it that night. Maybe curiosity, maybe guilt, maybe the quiet hope that something inside it would explain what had gone wrong. He flipped through the pages slowly. Goals written in younger handwriting stared back at him. Write something meaningful. Become disciplined. Do work that matters. The dates next to them were painful. 10 years old. Nothing had changed. Not because life had defeated him, but because he had never truly challenged it. For the first time that night, Daniel didn't feel the urge to distract himself. He didn't turn the TV back on. He didn't pick up his phone. He just sat there, staring at those unfinished promises. At midnight, fireworks lit up the sky outside his window. Colors reflected faintly on the glass. Daniel watched them without emotion. While the world celebrated a new beginning, Daniel faced an uncomfortable truth. He had been waiting for motivation instead of building discipline, waiting for confidence instead of taking action, waiting for tomorrow instead of living today. And that waiting had cost him years. That night, Daniel didn't cry. He didn't panic. He felt something quieter and far more dangerous. Regret. The kind that doesn't scream. The kind that whispers, "You knew better." The next morning, Daniel woke up late. The room was filled with pale winter light. His phone buzzed beside him, and without thinking, he picked it up. A notification appeared on the screen. It was a reminder he had written years ago and completely forgotten about. If nothing changes, nothing changes. Daniel sat up. He read it again and again. Something shifted inside him. Not dramatically, not suddenly, but deeply, like a crack forming in solid ground. For the first time, Daniel didn't feel inspired. He felt afraid. Afraid of living the same year again. Afraid of reaching 40 with the same regrets. Afraid of waking up one day and realizing his life had already ended while his body kept moving. And in that fear, something powerful was born. Clarity. Daniel stopped asking the question he had asked his entire life, "How do I change everything?" Instead, he asked a different question, one that finally felt honest. What is the smallest thing I can do today? That question didn't overwhelm him. It didn't scare him. It gave him permission to begin. Not tomorrow, not next year, but now. Daniel didn't wake up that morning feeling motivated or powerful. There was no sudden confidence, no dramatic energy rushing through his body. He still felt like the same man he had been the day before, tired, uncertain, and slightly afraid. But something inside him had changed. Clarity had replaced confusion. For the first time, Daniel understood that trying to change his entire life at once was the reason he had failed so many times before. Big promises always collapsed under their own weight. Grand plans made him feel excited for a moment and overwhelmed the next. So this time, he chose a different path. Daniel made a small decision, one that felt almost too simple to matter. Every morning, before checking his phone, before scrolling through messages or social media, he would spend 20 minutes improving himself. That was it. No complicated system, no extreme rules, no pressure to be perfect. Some days, those 20 minutes would be spent reading a few pages of a book. Other days, he would write a paragraph, reflect on his thoughts, or learn something new. The activity didn't matter nearly as much as the consistency. The rule was clear and non-negotiable. Show up every day. Daniel knew there would be mornings when he didn't feel like doing it, mornings when doubt would whisper that 20 minutes was pointless, mornings when he would be tempted to skip and promise himself he'd make up for it later. So he added one final rule: never miss twice. If he failed one day, he would return the very next day. No guilt, no excuses. That small commitment gave him something he hadn't felt in years: control. Not over his entire future, not over his whole life, but over this one moment. And for the first time, that felt enough. Nothing magical happened. Daniel didn't suddenly wake up inspired or energized. Some mornings, the 20 minutes felt longer than an hour. On certain days, he stared at the page with an empty mind, wondering if any of this even mattered. But he kept going, not because he felt motivated, but because he had made a decision. After about a month, Daniel began to notice changes. They weren't visible to anyone else. No one at work congratulated him. No one commented on his effort. But inside, something important had shifted. He felt lighter. For the first time in years, Daniel trusted himself. He had kept a promise, small, simple, but real, and that self-trust created momentum. That one habit quietly influenced others. Daniel started going to bed earlier, not out of discipline, but because mornings now meant something to him. He paid more attention to what he ate. He wasted less time scrolling mindlessly through his phone. None of these changes were forced. They happened naturally, as if his life was slowly aligning with the person he was becoming. Daniel stopped asking, "Do I feel like doing this today?" Instead, he began asking a new question. What would the person I'm becoming do right now? That question changed everything. 6 months passed. One morning, Daniel opened a blank notebook and began writing again. Not with the intention of finishing a book, not to impress anyone, just to express what had been building inside him. 1 page a day. That was the rule. Some days the writing felt powerful. Other days it felt meaningless. But Daniel didn't judge the results. He focused only on showing up. Page by page, his confidence grew. He realized something most people never understand. Motivation is unreliable. Discipline is temporary. But momentum is powerful. Once momentum takes hold, it pulls you forward even on days when you feel tired, doubtful, or uninspired. Daniel wasn't chasing success anymore. He was building consistency. And consistency was quietly reshaping his life, one small action at a time. 1 year passed quietly. There were no dramatic announcements, no viral moments, and no sudden applause. Daniel Carter's life did not transform overnight in a way the world could easily see. But inside him, everything was different. He woke up with intention, not excitement, not constant happiness, but purpose. Daniel looked back at the man he had been a year earlier and almost didn't recognize him. That version of himself had waited for motivation, hoping it would arrive before action. This version understood something far more powerful. Motivation is emotional. Discipline is exhausting. But systems change lives. Daniel realized that most people never fail because they lack talent or opportunity. They fail because they wait. They wait to feel ready. They wait to feel confident. They wait for the perfect moment. That moment never comes. What people miss is this truth. You don't rise to the level of your goals. You fall to the level of your habits. Daniel stopped measuring success by results. He measured it by consistency, by showing up when no one was watching, by keeping promises that no one else knew about. And that changed his identity. He no longer saw himself as someone trying to improve. He saw himself as someone who does what he commits to. That shift made all the difference. The book he had started writing didn't make him famous. It didn't make him rich. But it proved something far more valuable, that change was possible, and it didn't require a miracle. It required commitment. Daniel learned that the biggest transformations don't come from massive decisions. They come from small choices repeated daily. One habit, one action, one day at a time. Most people search for shortcuts. They want fast results, instant motivation, and visible success. But real growth happens quietly, in moments no one applauds. Daniel no longer waited for tomorrow. He built today. And in doing so, he escaped the prison he once didn't even realize he was trapped in. If you're watching this right now, there's a reason this story found you. Maybe you see yourself in Daniel. Maybe your days feel repetitive. Maybe you've been telling yourself the same promise for years. I'll start tomorrow. But let me tell you something important. Nothing is wrong with you. You're not lazy. You're not broken. You're not behind. You're just waiting. Waiting for motivation. Waiting for confidence. Waiting for the perfect moment. And that waiting is quietly stealing your life. The truth is simple but uncomfortable. You don't need a complete plan. You don't need permission. You don't need to feel ready. Readiness comes after action, not before it. Change doesn't begin with a massive decision, it begins with a small one. A decision so small it feels almost meaningless, but repeated every day, that decision becomes direction. Choose one habit, not 10, not everything at once, just one. 5 minutes of reading, 1 page of writing, a short walk, a quiet moment of reflection. Do it today, then do it again tomorrow. Not because you feel inspired, but because your future depends on it. Remember this, the life you want isn't built in big moments. It's built in the quiet hours when no one is watching. It's built when you show up for yourself, even when it feels pointless. You don't need to become a different person overnight. You just need to stop postponing the person you already know you can be. So don't wait for the new year. Don't wait for Monday. Don't wait for tomorrow. Start now. Because the most dangerous lie you can tell yourself is this: I still have time. And the most powerful decision you can make is to begin.